happy Black History Month. Yesterday I spoke about Jesse Owens dominating the Summer Olympics in Berlin in 1936. Today I want to stay on theme with the Olympics but move ahead to 1968. You might not remember the names Tommie Smith and John Carlos, but I can almost guarantee you that you've seen a picture of them. In 1968, both the anti-war and the civil rights movement were in full swing. In April of that year, MLK was assassinated, and in June, just 4 months before the Olympics, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. To put it mildly, there was a lot of unrest leading up to the Olympics. A man named Harry Edwards had founded an organization called the Olympic Project for Human Rights, and of which Tommie Smith and John Carlos were a part of the organization. Harry had originally suggested that all black athletes in America boycott the Olympics that year, but that boycott never materialized. So Tommie Smith and John Carlos ended up going to the Olympics, but they had protests still in mind. Tommie Smith and John Carlos were to represent the U.S. in the 200-meter race, and represent they did. Smith set a world record on his way to winning gold, and Carlos came in third, just 0.3 of a second behind him. A man named Peter Norman from Australia won silver. And this isn't what the entire story is about, but I do think it's fun and worth mentioning. Before standing on the podium, Smith and Carlos both told Peter what they were going to do, and Peter was all about it. Because Australia at the time had a white Australia policy, and Peter Norman hated it. Peter Norman was the one that suggested they all wear the Olympic Project for Human Rights badges on their coats. And originally, Tommie Smith and John Carlos were planning on wearing their black gloves while they stood on the podium, but John Carlos forgot his in the village, and so Peter Norman was the one that suggested that Tommie Smith just slit the gloves. And that's why Carlos raises his left hand while Smith raises his right hand. The gloves and raised fists were not the only part of the protest, though. Both Smith and Carlos took the podium with no shoes on, just black socks to represent black poverty. Smith had on a black scarf to represent black pride. And Carlos had the top of his tracksuit unzipped in solidarity with all blue-collar workers. And Carlos also wore a necklace of beads around his neck, and he said they represented those individuals that were lynched or killed and that no one said a prayer for, that were hung and tarred. It was for those thrown off the side of the boats in the Middle Passage. The national anthem played, they both raised their fists, and then they were booed off the podium. The International Olympic Committee expelled Smith and Carlos from the games, although contrary to popular belief, they did not have to give their medals back. They still have their medals. And to this day, Smith and Carlos both hold that what they were doing was not a black power salute, but more so a human rights salute. After the race, though, Smith did say, "If I win, I'm an American, not a black American. But if I did something bad, then they would say a Negro. We are black and we are proud of being black. Black America will understand what we did tonight." There's so much more to the stories of Tommie Smith and John Carlos. They're both still alive, still educating, and still teaching. So please go check out their life, their work, and their story. That's the story for today. Come back tomorrow and I'll teach you about the time the NRA supported gun control.